I'm Lynn Boyer, and you're listening to Community Catalysts, a podcast that supports each other through shared experience. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Community Catalyst. I'm your host, Lynn Boyer, Executive Director of Community Impact here at the YMCA of Greater Nashua, and I have my friend Mike with us today. Mike, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, Lynn. I am Mike Apfelberg, and I'm the president of the United Way of Greater Nashua, right here in Nashua, New Hampshire.
Great. Thank you, Mike, and welcome. Mike and I work very closely together on lots of initiatives, which we'll talk about in a minute. But our two organizations work very closely together, which is really great. So, Mike, tell us about the United Way, who you are, what you do, and who you serve, as well as where you're located.
Sure. Thank you. So we are an organization that's been around since 1929. We were founded during the Great Depression, which is probably as good a time as any to have your birthday. Our organization actually came out of a community emergency response to the Crown Hill fire, which was a devastating fire back in the late 20s that burned down a pretty significant portion of the town. At the time, a number of leaders came together and they said, look, we need to have a response in the future because we know this isn't the last disaster we're ever going to experience. So they created something which became known as the community chest. The community chest, same as on the Monopoly board. No surprise there, actually. If you think about the Great Depression as the time when Monopoly was born, Parker Brothers actually stole the word community chest from United Way.
Oh, wow.
So we beat them to the punch. The community chest was a shared pooled resource. When people had resources, financial resources available to them, they could make contributions to the community chest. When individuals and organizations had needs that they couldn't cover, they could draw from the community chest. So that was our birth. Of course, we evolved many, many times over the years out of that and became an organization which for a long time was really our primary work was in developing a community needs assessment, assessing where the community is going, where are we getting better, where are we getting worse, what are the gaps in service, and then making grants available and funding available to nonprofit organizations to work in programs effectively to address those needs. In fact, I have a clipping from the Nashua Telegraph right outside my office from 1937 that has a list of agencies that received funding in 1937. One of them is the YMCA. There's a grant that we made apparently for $8,500 back then, which I looked it up. I said, oh, that's not a lot of money. I looked it up. That's $185,000 in today's money. So it was actually pretty substantial for one of the programs that the Y was running.
Yeah.
And so we did that for a long time, and we got to 2020. And the pandemic, when it hit, it was an event in our community which shut down most of the nonprofits in our community. They couldn't serve the way they meant to, the way they were designed to. And so we shifted and really recalibrated ourselves back to our roots, back to our DNA as an emergency response organization. And we shifted to doing things like distributing food and hand sanitizer and toilet paper in the very beginning, Chromebooks for kids that were doing remote learning, face masks, and so many other things. In fact, your boss, Mike LaChance, was one of our volunteers in the very beginning, helping to distribute food in our community. And that's what we did. And we've really shifted gears quite a bit since the pandemic, but that is really what we've evolved into as an organization that is a community impact organization, one that addresses needs in a unique way.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I know it's kind of hard to define the United Way, right? Like any organization, it's hard to find the why as well. But
It
um,
is.
yeah,
But in a nutshell, what I do tell people is think of the United Way as the organization for all of the other organizations.
Mm.
We're there, no matter what it means, to promote, to help fund, to engage volunteers, whatever the needs are of the nonprofits in our community, especially the smaller ones, to be honest, who really aren't as capable of deploying resources as they would like. We're there to help support them in their missions. And of course, that includes the Y.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And we have a long-standing partnership. When I started with the Y, the United Way was actually housed at our Merrimack branch. So for our listeners, where the EEC office currently is, that's where the United Way was a long time ago. And then it, became corporate, and then it became classrooms and
Yeah.
all of that. So we go way back. And you brought up during COVID too, and I remember that time so specifically because, we were closed as well for about 3 months, and the work that you did gave us an additional purpose. I remember going, and I actually brought my kids to go pick up fresh food from the soup kitchen to distribute in the community, and it was such a great partnership for us to have because it gave us a different purpose during that time when otherwise we were just closed, right? So we were trying to do fitness, videos online and all of that, but that gave us another way to engage with the community. So that was really impactful for me, for sure. And then we also more recently we've partnered in tutoring initiatives. So I know that we have some tutors with students that will often come to the Y as a public space to use, which is really nice. And then of course you highly support our food distribution initiative. We have a pantry in each one of our branches, and the United Way provides the food for that, which we are so grateful for because those get used quite a bit.
And as recently as something which we're just inventing now is we're partnering with the Y and the hospitals and Greater Nashua Mental Health and the Senior Center to launch a program of memory cafes in our community to support people who are losing their memories due to dementia or Alzheimer's, but not just to support them, but to support their caregivers. I don't know about you, Lynn, but I've been through this journey. You reach a certain age in your life and you start to go through experiences with elderly family members, and that can be pretty lonely. As a caregiver, you're feeling kind of like, what do I do, and who can I talk to, and how does it's just can be a really hard experience. So the Memory Cafe is something that we're also partnering with the Y on to bring to the Nashua region, which I'm very excited about that project.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. So let's talk about that for a second. So we will have one at the Y, and then can you share the other two locations that you will have memory cafes at?
Yep, we're launching in October. And so the Y is going to have a location on exit 5. And the senior center, the senior activity center on Temple Street, is going to have a location. And the final location will be at the outpatient facilities run by St. Joseph Hospital, just off of Amherst Street, behind what used to be the Country Tavern, for those who've been around for more than 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Uh,
there's not very many, right? The memory cafes in the state.
There aren't in the state. It's a what we would call an evidence-based practice, which exists really in many places in the world.
Hmm.
Very popular programs in Massachusetts. Very few in New Hampshire. The closest one which I could find is actually up in Manchester at the Courier, which
Mm.
sounds cool.
Yeah.
It seems like something we can do here in our community, and it'll be once a month at each of those locations for an hour and a half. Kind of think of it like a memory meetup. You go, you create some new memories if you're losing your memory, and your friend, your family member, your partner, whoever is your caretaker, gains some community as well. So
Hmm.
I love this program because it's such a great way for us to support our community in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's a demographic that we already both serve. So it just makes sense. So yeah, I'm very excited. Um, so Mike, in your time with United Way, what is something that you have been the most proud of?
I am proud of a lot of things. So I'm going on 10 years. When I started, United Way was in a pretty rough shape. We had lost quite a bit of funding through what we call the traditional workplace giving campaign, where employees give through their workplace. And that's just been an evolving landscape. So we were really experiencing some financial difficulties. One of the things I'm proud of is turning that around, and through a combination of fundraising events and collaborative fundraising events, as well as individual giving, as well as grants, been able to kind of right the ship, if you will. You can't do anything if you aren't around. So we did focus heavily on that. But what I'm really proud of is actually how we have moved our organizational mission forward after the pandemic, and really become an organization that identifies needs in the community that are not being addressed. And when those come up, if they're, we vet them through the lens of, is it important? Is it something related to our pillars of health, education, and economic mobility? Is anybody else doing this? And are we the best ones to stand something up to address those needs if nobody is doing that? And so this has become really an important way for us to define ourselves. Much of the work we do is around financial stability and economic mobility. And I think that that's an area where our focus will continue to be in the future.
Yeah.
I am proud of that. Changing what you do, that's not easy. But I have such a great supportive board of directors and staff that, it hasn't been as hard as it could have been actually too.
Yeah. No, that's great to hear. And so if you had a magic glass ball and you could see into the future, say 10 or 15 years, what would you love to see the United Way doing in that time?
Well, the things we're doing right now are things that we will probably be doing in 10 or 15 years. That's actually not that long of a time horizon. The areas where we're focusing heavily right now on as unaddressed needs are in food security. If you think about food security, we have a lot of really great, for example, pantries in our community, but there are also programs like free and reduced lunch and supplemental nutrition assistance, food stamps, where there are a lot of people that could qualify, but don't actually apply because of the difficulties involved with that. So we're in the process of launching a program of actually hands-on navigators to walk people through hands-on through that process, get them from, sort of it's a great idea to actually being recipients. That's an unaddressed need that I think that's going to continue to grow. Digital barriers is another area where we're focusing a ton of work. I always tell people, if you think about it, if you look in your pocket, you pull out, your cell phone, we walk around with computers that are, more powerful than the computers that put men on the moon in our pockets or our pocketbooks. But there are a lot of people that do not have access to these resources. It's shocking, but in Hillsborough County alone, over 10% of the population does not have access to either the internet or a digital device. So they're getting left behind because they can't go back to school. They can't search for work. They can't apply for resources. Those are really critical barriers which we're working to address. And I don't see that going away in the next 10 years, to be honest. And the third area is the one that you mentioned earlier, that this tutoring work, the work of supporting academic needs in our community. You do that so great through through the summer program that you run. The scholars, I forget the exact name.
Power Scholars
Power
Academy. Yeah,
Scholars.
yeah.
Just do such an amazing job through that partnership with the school district. And our approach is like the gap that we see is throughout the year, there are students who just kind of fall through the cracks. They don't quite get what they're doing. So we have a program which has no curriculum, kind of drives educators crazy, but there's no curriculum. And it's volunteers who will meet students where they are at. So as an example, I have one volunteer who's a research chemist by training, who tutors third grade kids in math. And he doesn't do math the way they teach math today. He does math the way he does math. So they work through these problems, their homework together collaboratively. They develop problem-solving skills, and it also creates some mentorship kind of opportunities as I think growing those types of programs is really where we're going to continue to focus, Lynn.
Yeah, that's great. Very, very much of an impact for our community. I love it. Is there anything that if our audience could leave knowing one thing about the United Way, what might that be?
One thing about the United Way that I would want your audience to know is that we have a United Way. And I got to say, that's been a challenge. When I first started, it's less of a challenge now because we've become sort of an organization which is everywhere all the time. But there are still many people in our community who don't even realize that there is a United Way or what we do. And when they do know of United Way, I try to encourage people to understand that what we do is a reflection of what our community needs us to do. So maybe they're from somewhere else. Maybe they grew up in South Carolina and they know their United Way from where they grew up or where they moved from. Well, that's not what we do. And that's the beauty a little bit of the United Way model. And I'm certain to some degree that that's the same as the Y model. We do what our community calls upon us to do. And that's not the same in every place. So what we see here is addressing those needs. And what I would encourage people to do is just understand that and understand that if there's an unaddressed need, that pick up the phone and give us a call, because we're for sure going to give it a hard look and see if there's something there for us to look at working on.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Mike. As always, it's a pleasure to see you, and I will see you soon as we continue to plan for a memory cafe. But thank you for joining us today on Community Catalyst.
And the gratitude is bi-directional. I appreciate you and the Y team and everything you guys do. I speak to folks from a lot of United Ways around the country. We're pretty well networked with each other, and we talk about who our great partners are in the community. And I got to be honest, I think the Y and United Way partnership in our community is unique and very, it's a great thing for all of us who live and work here.
Yeah, absolutely. We are definitely stronger together. So
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And to our audience, thank you. And we'll see you next time. You can download Community Catalyst on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Castbox, and Spotify.